Do we not? We do not have. Okay.
Then let me hold
Don't
on.
have a quorum. Okay, so
Okay,
that
let me
means
hold on.
voting will be hampered, but we can still move forward as we will, and we must. And so we'll move on to the administrative items. So can't approve the minutes on page 2. Pardon me, we have to defer that until we have a form, as I understand. But we can move to new office space update. Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, I just was going to share with the committee as a follow-up to the communication that went out, the summary of expenses. So we ended up, as you know, completing the project on time, but also within the budget, we have about $8,900 that are surplus from what was approved and are not obligated. So we've got a couple of outstanding orders relative to signage and the films, like as you can see on the window there, we're looking to figure out what screening we're going to put on these doors, but really that's the last thing. And those things should be installed and final paid by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so is that 8,000 for those items?
No, sir.
It's not. So that is truly surplus.
It is truly surplus
Okay.
and obligated and excess over what we've committed to spend.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And that's great news because maybe we can use, if the committee and the group so desire, use that money for furniture and other items that you had put off and deferred. I remember that all too
Yes,
well.
sir.
So
Yes.
I think that would be an appropriate way to recommend that. And so that we can say, hey, yay, from my standpoint, yay, and look at what needs you have in a priority way.
That would be
Prioritize.
fantastic.
Yeah, that would be great. We could do
We
that. That would be
have,
wonderful. Recommended.
We have quotes from Creative and we have
Okay.
a priority list of what we'd like to see doing
Wonderful.
next. So it is in excess of that $8,000, but certainly that could be an option to go toward
Absolutely.
those fixtures.
Thanks for that. Any questions or comments regarding that? I think that's great news. Number one, on time. And on budget is even more significant. I think as well. Many times it could be the opposite. So I'm really pleased to hear that. And that's great news. That was one of the goals I had as in this committee to make sure that we were on time and that we delivered.
Yes.
And that we delivered within budget. So thank you so much for that. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Schipper, before we move to item 3, financial reports. If not, why don't we move to item 3A, financial reports as of March 31st, 2022 or 23?
23.
23, there we go. Okay, no problem. That's it. Okay. Item A, page 4.
So page 4
Mhm.
is the balance sheet, again, presented in the modified accrual basis, which is the governmental funds basis. So it's a statement that's in between.
Mhm.
And there is nothing that's terribly significant, except that we're tracking as we normally would in the balance sheet,
Mhm.
including maintaining our unassigned fund balance at 1.2 million, which is reduced for the capital budget expenses. So we're still maintaining that margin above the board's goal of $1 million. So moving to the next page. Page 5, we have the profit and loss summary. And dropping all the way down to the bottom line. You'll see that we were incurring losses during, and I want to focus on the net operating income loss.
Yeah, operating income.
For the year, we had 33,318 surplus.
Okay.
But our operating results for the 3 months, January, February, and March, did fluctuate significantly.
Mhm.
And the primary driver of those is the availability of time to bill. In March, with the 28th month is one of our shorter months with fewer hours to bill. March is actually our longest.
Mhm.
For those of you wondering, it's 180 months.
Mhm.
But I look at section 8.
Mhm.
And so that actually returned a result very similar to August, which is also our longest time available to us.
Mhm.
So the operating results are pretty much what we thought, are trending the way that we thought. And so we were excited to see that March did produce a surplus of 17,000 We had 2 staff positions become filled during that month. One on March 1st, one on March 15th, 16th. And so that's what drove the turnaround in month results. The availability of staff and the additions.
And building for the time hours allocated equivalent to the month.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point. Any comments or questions from anyone, Mr. Chair or Mr. Chairman, or you anyone? I yield to you first. Great. Yeah, when you think about February and March, you think about the balance when you average. You look at averages there. So, but the point well taken in terms of that. But the great news is that it's surplus and we are positive, even given the move that we endured this past year, which is something that we do it in many years. So that's a good news. Where are we with respect to budget, budget versus actual? How are we, am I ahead of myself or?
I was going to highlight a few of those things in the more detail.
When you get there, go ahead, when appropriate.
So let's move into page 6.
Okay. Sense.
And if you look at the federal revenue, the first 2 line items are our 2 sources of main sources for the TPF, PL and the 5303. Both sources are running well short of budget, which is what we've been trending given the 2 positions that we're making. We're primarily dedicated to that program.
You said 5303.
Right, that would be, well, that would be account number 4102.
Oh, 4102.
The name of the revenue sources.
Okay, 53. I see section 5303. Okay, good. I'm looking at the account number. So I was looking at, excuse me. Pardon me. Okay. Those are the biggest revenue generators, in fact.
Right, those are the most significant revenues.
As you noted.
And, 1 million out of, or 1.1 million out of 1.2 in the federal side. So we're tracking at 62%, which is less than what we expected. But given the vacancies, it is what we expect.
Okay.
And, the same trend occurs in the state revenue because they are also dominated by those 2 revenue sources. You get down to the 4,300, the local revenue. CVTA reimbursement and the service fee. We're producing more work in those areas than what we had budgeted. And by plan with the interim director situation, especially. And the capital region fund, that's the regional indicators. That's based on our expectations as well. So we're getting a little bit of a pickup in revenue there.
Okay.
Versus what we expected.
So you have what 81% roughly, as compared to the 62.4 when we look at federal sources primarily. So is that 81 where we should be, or where are we with regard to that? Is you comfortable with that percentage, or should we be higher or lower?
I think we are where we're supposed to be.
Where we're supposed to be.
And for purposes of projecting the rest of the year, it's actually, we will continue to do that. We will continue to outpace budget, especially in the CBTA.
Okay, good. Good, that's good.
The regional indicators, will pace a little bit less than this last quarter, but just because that funding source is coming to its end.
And I notice interest income too. I count number 4801. I see is 1,087%.
Yes,
Is that correct?
it's a little conservative in the budget.
It is, okay. So
But the other,
approximately
you asked me to put the interest rates
I did
on the balance sheet.
Yeah, I do. So we want more detail.
As opposed to going back to that at June 30th. Our investment was giving us 1.1%, and we're getting 4.7%. There'll be inflation that is, that's hit us all. Is now showing up in our interest rate. So that's where.
Okay, and looking at that, one thing we want to look at is a treasurer's report, look at the amount of cash that is invested, relative to the earning interest versus that which is reserved for operations and operating. So there'll be some hope that we can see share in the future. Most organizations that at this point have huge amounts of interest income, given the rate increases to the Fed and investments that are, well on track. Well, beyond what we haven't done historically.
Right.
So
If you
that's
look at the
good.
bottom of page 4,
Page 4. Okay.
the bottom of the balance sheet,
Yes, sir. Okay. We go with that.
you'll actually see,
Mhm.
we do have cash in bank, which is higher
Okay.
than investments.
Okay.
Normally we try to keep that better balanced,
Okay.
but just as of March 31st.
Yeah, in
That
terms of,
links right there.
yeah, I'm thinking in terms of how much cash is invested, what one thing I'm looking at. Treasurer's fund
And then
on a monthly basis.
the interest rate on that'll be a investment.
I see the contracts, very good in that regard. Yeah, invest total cash and cash equivalents. I said, oh, you got one for the treasurer. Well, I love that here. Excuse me, I'm just catching up behind here. Pardon me. Anyway, I love that. Thank you. That's what I'm talking, that's all I was talking about. I apologize for jumping here on you like that. Forgive me, but yeah, go right ahead, sir. Let's say any questions or comments.
Back to the detailed statement
Mhm.
on page. That's page 7, this would be page 8.
Page 8.
The first item is expenses, salaries and wages,
Mhm.
and pay time off 5120.
Mhm.
Looking at the 3 months, January, February, and March. That trend also coincides with the earnings results. There was, many fewer hours. And that dollar value is much less than the other 2 months,
Mhm.
both of which had, well, January has 2 holidays, February has 1, March has 9, and then there's the extra day as well.
Mhm.
So there was much more productivity time from a pay time off. So I continue to highlight that just because it is such a strong driver of our, financial performance. It's how many hours we can get into the billable cycle. And so the number of hours in any given month will really force the issue. Profit and loss for them. The number of vacation hours, sick hours, holiday hours. That really does really come home when you look at these statements.
Yeah, absolutely right, because I know historically we've seen as a driver that can shift us left to right, so to speak, up and down. You're right, absolutely. It's a big one. I just want to look at as we near year end as well. We look at the last quarter, for example, April through June. As we look at them to see what our final results will be for 23. Let's get trying to do it. Okay, very good. Any other items of concern?
There's 2 more items to
Okay.
emphasize. You see at the bottom of page 9.
Okay.
At the very bottom, you see transfer between activities. We have 2 main activities that don't have a direct funding source, but we still maintain their time according to that primary activity. And then we transfer it to, in this case, in both cases, the TPO, where they do qualify for reimbursement through that program. And so that's why that section is there, but it's part of our efforts to optimize our billing and those revenue sources. And so we still wanted that management information of the time going into those specific programs as we budgeted them previously, and then actually show the transfer into the program where the funding needed. And then at the bottom of page 10, we have the capital activity. You can see, almost 250,000, well, 234,000 was incurred for the capital project. And that is the driver reducing our fund balance by 200,000.
Okay, so that dropped us in the fund balance at 234. Okay, and that was related to, again, the move. I moved the.
Right.
Okay,
that's correct. And that reduction was approved by this committee and the board.
That's right.
That's part of the funding source.
Yeah. Yeah, I do recall prior meetings. And so, yeah, this is good to know and share with the committee, because we're going to have, I'm going to recommend, I think that's a committee, I hope we'll recommend that we continue to review our financial position in terms of what we think is appropriate, $1 million, $1.2 million, what have you. I think the committee needs to look at that, given moving to a new location and we're doing different operating costs. I think that'd be something in the future we should try to look at and recommend to the full commission, what we think we make remarks as a committee. And so your input and Mr. Shepherd, your input is valued as you think about, as we think about that in these coming days.
Sure.
With respect to a new operating year, fiscal year 24.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I did want to just point something else out.
Please
Your
do.
attention. I know that this was a question at the last board meeting when we reviewed the December 31 financials. The bottom of page or midway down on page 8, the 6,000 series is the direct cost pool. And this is just, I know the finance committee has spent more time on this format than the full board has, but I recall at the last board meeting, there was a similar question about line 6425, travel agency. If you look over on the far right, it's again, kind of what you noted earlier, it's a 1,200% variance to budget. That's driven by more of our travel related expenses are reimbursable under grants. So if you look at on the next page, page 9, in the indirect cost pool for the same line 7425 travel agency.
Yeah.
You'll see our percentage of budget there is only at 45.9%. So essentially we're within budget for the whole sum of travel agency. It just means that more of those expenses have been able to be allocated to programs reimbursable as opposed to not. So it's actually a good thing.
And it's great.
To see those.
Smiling.
But I think that that was a flag that was raised in the full commission meeting and took some explanation. So just since you're both here and I know I think Mr. Waddell could ask that question.
It just related to, and Mr. Chairman, thank you. First of all, you make me feel smart because back in Hanover, I asked for a percentage column to be added to presentations sometimes. But some of those larger percentages do pop out. Some of it's from under budgeting, or in this case, speculation. We weren't quite sure what interest rates were going to do. Mr. Waddell did bring that up. And so the corollary was 25% over on the grant fund side. So while they're on different sheets, there's a nexus. So we're solid there.
Great. That's a good point.
I just expect it'll be a question again. At the
And
next
that's a great
full
point.
commission
And
meeting.
one thing we may want to consider is maybe a footnote. Number maybe 1, footnote 1 or A, B, or C, and then start toward the bottom of that footnote outlining that way. It jumps out at you as a footnoted item. And you can correlate, as the chair said, to both items. So we could do that. I think that would be helpful. Is that okay?
I think too, you typically address that in the narrative that you
That's
make
right.
for the full commission, but yeah,
Okay.
I don't
But I can
know.
make it more formal.
Commissioners.
Yeah. Footnoted would be great if you would. Thank you. All right, appreciate that. Other items, or
No, sir.
any other items, or concerns or expenditure we're concerned about? But I tell you, it's good to see positive numbers. Or those, that's a good trend.
Yeah.
Let's keep it up.
Yeah.
Legally.
We're very pleased to see that March come in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's good news. And so, the reason why I was asking earlier about budget versus actual, I always like to track that, especially to the end of the final quarter. In respect to the accruals needed, as you point out, and expenditures that need to be incurred or accrued for as we near year end. To get our financials as intact as we possibly can. I think it's good to do as we this quarter. So thank you. I just want to compliment you on breaking out the way you've done the different categories. It's been refreshing. Thank you for bringing out more detail. Yes, sir. Anything else for you there?
That was all I wanted to emphasize on our results.
Okay. That's item A, page 4. Any other questions or comments before we look at the 23-24? That's about 23 budget updates. Any comments relative to that? Budget, pretty much. Please.
Jump to page 20. Again, going to the bottom line, net operating income and loss. We're actually projecting a surplus for the fourth quarter of this fiscal year,
Great,
like 40,966,
great.
with the emphasis being in May.
Amen. Okay.
And as you might expect, as I said,
Great.
it's based on time available.
Okay.
It's a month with more hours available to us to put into our fundable activities. And so that's the primary driver there. The expenses are fairly conservative to maintain kind of the idea that we're still operating below budget to revenue.
Wonderful,
So we, scale accordingly.
wonderful. That's great news. And that's two, in spite of the fact we used $200,000 in spite of that. I think that's great news.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
we're positive.
I'll note too that the original budget that was approved, which is, I think compared here is our projection for year end for this year was a neutral budget. So
Yeah, I recall.
no transfer from or to fund balance. So it's nice to see, and as you said, in spite of the move and in spite of the vacancies, being able to contribute a small amount to fund balance.
It's great news. That's good. I know the commissioners will be pleased to hear that good news. I want to highlight that too. Okay, we're wonderful. Good. I'm glad you projected out too. I like that. Means you're looking at accruals and everything else. So we're not surprised or shocked. We get to look at year-end results. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? May I want to find anything? If not, okay, let's move on to item C. What our upcoming budget may look like, which is on page 21, as I understand.
Actually, I think that page 21 would have been earlier in the page 21 in the packet is just the summary of
Okay.
the move.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's
I
there
got
so that
you.
you can
Okay,
see
I
that.
see. Yeah, thank you. I didn't look at it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that.
I'll keep this one
Okay.
out.
Okay.
So we have had lots of movement over the last couple of weeks. Actually, the last couple of months in preparation for moving forward with this upcoming fiscal year's budget. I'll give a couple of highlights, and I know Chairman Davis also is going to go over some things. Really, I think, Mr. Holland, you know better than anybody, we've been trying to get sort of our foundational pieces in place while we're also moving the organization forward and becoming more committed than ever to supporting the needs of the local jurisdictions. And that's been a topic for the last probably 2 or 3 executive committee meetings of what does that look like? What are those priorities need to be able to meet the demands and the needs of the local jurisdictions? And how do we do that in a way that financially we can support it? So Chairman Davis challenged me this year to think a little bit more critically about how to tie our strategic objectives from our work program into the budget. So I think the hope was today that we would walk through with this committee how those priorities connect. And then I think Dean might have some commentary about how he's been plugging all of the figures in together.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission,
Please.
so more than just bringing something as an initiative to the Finance Committee and those types of things, I think this is more of coming back from a subordinate role as the entire organization, recognizing that there were certain non-negotiables the Finance Committee said they wanted this organization to look at. And I think we've had 2 seasons. I think the first season was getting to, as we all refer to, the $1 million, right? And that was
Yes.
back.
Yes.
But we got there, and
Thank you.
I've publicly commended you for that leadership of this committee. That's no small task. Interestingly enough, as we kind of turned the corner and found ourselves in another season, we're now in a season of not only stability, but substantial financial strength. And I'm not sure that that's what some folks, I don't know if they admit it or not, but did not think that I think in that short period of time that we would be where we are now. The executive committee, as well as the full commission, did have some initiatives that they wanted to work on. So I just wanted to go through a few things with your permission.
Yes, please.
So as we have done the restoration and we have the financial stability, the reality is a lot of that was done because of the additional months that folks graciously said they would continue to serve as members of this committee. And that continuity brought us here. There's no question about it that if we hit, and I know some folks probably were looking forward to coming off finance committee,
Yes.
right? I mean, because it's a heavy lift job, but that is a guiding document, particularly in the government. If it's not in your budget, then you can't say it's a priority. And so we've had substantial, fiscal performance. You go back and look at our P&L. The first thing we went over, we've got March, but we've had $30,000 months on others. We've had some dodges. But I mean, we're still a full month to the positive, a heavy month to the positive of 30 grand. And that's just one note. We are better than we projected for the remainder of the FY. Original budget presumed a break-even position, which Nicole had just talked about. And we finished the office location. And I wrote down what you said here. You said on time and on budget, which and I know that's one of your priorities. And so that project surplus, that while that wasn't necessarily a mandate, we recognized that was a priority for you and your committee. And that priority, because it was your priority, became a priority for the executive committee. And so I believe that the full commission has met that mandate by the finance committee. And there's some things that we're looking at that don't require local governments to give any more money. And I think that's really important, which leads me into leveraging some of our financial positions. And so, Mr. Chairman, we've heard very clearly from members of the full commission that some of the support that PlanRVA has been giving to the localities has just had a huge ROI in those localities. And they've asked for more of that type of support. And we have that capacity to do that. I think not only fiscally, but I think it's an exciting time for staff to be able to work on varied projects. Maybe there's some in Richmond, maybe there's some in Chesterfield, but there's some really, neat and cool things taking place, maybe in a Goochland or a Powhatan as well. And because we serve the region, it gives our staff an opportunity to look at different types of projects and be involved in those types of things. And the localities have spoken back very clearly to me, I think over the last 7 or 8 months, that was a desire. We implemented it pretty quickly. We are going to have to bolster that some, but that's why we're a regional body. So I believe there's unlimited upside potential to the forward progression of this organization, no question about it. So we're going to increase our relevancy amongst the localities through level of service. The jurisdictions are going to see that. Obviously, work plan development is an easy matter. But the executive committee has woven in full commission's priorities as well as those of the finance committee, and some of the things that I think we're going to bring forward to show that we have met the mandates of PlanRVA full commission. When I say we, in this case, we're talking about the executive committee, is the increased demand on services. So we have an opportunity to invest for our data research and analysis in FY23. And we also have an LTA, local technical assistant, opportunity to invest in FY24. So that'll work well. When we talk about leveraging organizational partnerships, their last executive committee meeting, they gave the authority for some of the local support that we have on the technical side. We want to be a bank, right? And have kind of be a repository for a lot of the information. And so we want to have somebody here for that. And I think the commission has certainly said that's the route they want to go. But we can leverage some of those organizations, NATO's being one of them, by simply increasing our dues membership, which we thought was going to be somewhere around $3,000 or $4,000. We got confirmation this morning. Martha sent out and said, hey, I'd like to prorate it, which I give her a lot of credit for. So here's a number I'd like to do. So we prorated our dues membership to move us up for $2,000, but we also got a reduction in some registration fees, those types of things. But a position that could have cost us tens of thousands of dollars, we now have access to information through NATO that we can take and bring here for pennies on the dollar. And so while they authorized, I think it was $3,000 or $4,000 in the executive committee meeting, we just came in this year with $2,000. So I think those types of things are important. So that equates in better service levels with no cost borne by PlanRVA. So increase in recurring revenue opportunities. Building out the community partnerships to establish the streams of revenue is going to be extremely important. As you know, we're billable hours kind of organization. So we're looking at that. The executive committee was very clear that as we look at employee compensation, the models that they wanted to use, And it came in at the model of 10%. Martha, myself, and Dan met, asked to give, we looked initially at 8, Jim, but I said, from my mind, if you go 10, then I can figure out anything above and beyond that or below that. Because if I'm 10%, I can, the math is easy. So we ran that. If we do a 10%, which we have in the budget for employee compensation, we're actually going to be through some NPO models and different things. I know you understand that. We're actually going to be about $50,000 to $53,000 ahead than if we had done an 8%. So there's a, I know, and so I know Gregory, math lawyers and math Marines are pretty, you know, as Martha said, it's not intuitive, but we have a unique organization and uniqueness is important. Not everybody's unique. I think we're unique. So that said, there's an opportunity for us to invest in some positions because we have the money, which correlates directly. And that's one of the things I want to talk about during budget presentations. They correlate directly to what the commission said they required. And so if we can do that, I don't want to say on the cheap, but I've got the money, you've got the money, you know, Mr. Byerly has, you know, Dr. Nudo, we have the money, that if we can do that, then we start off with an ROI. You know what I mean? There's just a return on investment. So we're going to be talking to folks about that. But the key is that anything that we're looking at investing in that the finance committee has told us is a priority, is already going to be funded. So, right. So that works well. And we do have one grant that we're 100% sure we're going to get, and the other is the 75%. But that's what we do, right? So, and 75% sure is the community foundation. And then there's something a little bit comma after that too that would also help correlate with the community development. But I had all these notes, Mr. Chairman, but I'm going to get bored reading through them, or I'm going to get really excited reading through them, and then I'm going to be bouncing all over the place. The point is, I just wanted to one, say how grateful I am, and I know the executive committee is, that those folks you included decided to stay and extend your tenure. Not that we don't have great commission members, but that continuity is the reason that we're here. I don't think there's any question. I've told you that outside the office at dinners, regionally, it is important. So now that we're there and we can now meet some of the demands that the other folks are talking about, and again, not just the smaller college. Dr. Newbill talked to me about some things, Reverend Nelson talked to me about some things that they want to see done, and we're getting them done without having to come back to the finance committee and say, pull, find, tell, we've got it. Now's probably the time to go in and make those investments. So we have this, which is great. A little bit harder to read for my brain, but I've been going over it. And I just want to say this, Dan, and you just, the work that you put into this is great. You know, spreadsheets blow my mind, but we have to look at it, right? We have to. And you've done a phenomenal job, and I can't thank Ms. Schickle enough for the work that she's put into it. So that was a lot of bloviating to say that what the requirements that you put on the organization as a whole have been met, and we're prepared to come back to you and show you how we're going to meet the requirements that the finance committee has put forward and how they're going to be funded. So. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate your vision, your ideas. They're great. That's what makes the organization great. Is that we're not stagnant. We continue to expire and continue to better. So, but really good news from my perspective. Indeed, 10%. I concur.
It hasn't been voted on, but we're going to have some questions and but it was very clear to me from commission members and. Not had conversations where anybody set policy outside of a committee meeting or a commission meeting, but committee members do call from time to time and have ancillary conversations, which is absolutely perfect. And I've had conversations with the executive committee, and everybody this was the mandate, so that's what we bring it back.
Excellent. We appreciate you sharing that, and the committee does as well. And so thank you for that. And of course, I think it's great, and of course, I'm gonna make sure that, we stay in tune with what we need in terms of software, kind of those kind of systems,
Yeah.
I think that's a very important issue we've had on taps for some time, so that's good news, great to hear. Appreciate it. And the other thing else, Ms. Sugar, you'd like to say?
I think just kind of to maybe give a little bit of context to the handout that I put together.
Okay.
As Chairman Davis said, we're modeling the 10%.
Okay.
Really that's driven by wanting to be sure that
Mhm.
from a retention perspective, we're competitive. We know the cost of vacancies to the agency are tremendous for us. And so building that continuity of our staffing, maintaining it is really important to our bottom line. So we want to be able to undertake what the executive committee talked about at the last meeting and incorporate that in here. Part of that is achieved by maximizing the revenue that we have available. So, as you know, it's kind of a two-pronged approach. It's on the right-hand side, it's from a management perspective, making sure that staff are spending time in revenue generating activities. Or another way to say that is making sure that the things that we're working on have a funding stream attached to them. So that's just really critical. We also do believe that building additional staff capacity. So the budget modeling includes 4 full-time new FTEs this coming fiscal year. The grant writer is directly related to that local technical assistance opportunity. We want to take advantage of the bipartisan infrastructure law and make sure that this region gets as much of the funding opportunities. I think Barb and Trinity did a great job with their presentation of how we're tracking that. And we think if we can bring that capacity in to go after those grants, that could be a benefit to us, but also to our member localities. The bookkeeping really helps to bring capacity to Diane and then trickle up to Dan. So she can focus on the work that she needs to do as finance manager. And the bookkeeper can be a support to her to make sure that the kind of ongoing activities, our portfolio of grants have grown tremendously. And so really having that additional capacity there, I think helps keep us moving in the right direction. And then the 2 transportation planners, one, it keeps the work happening and it keeps us back to probably where our staffing levels ought to be. But it also helps to make sure that we have that base to be able to bring in from an indirect cost recovery, really be able to make sure that the numerator and denominator are the right proportions to be able to bring that back in to cover our fringe and indirect expenses. You mentioned the software. We've signed the agreement and are excited to be able to go forward with an enterprise ArcGIS license. So that'll mean that we don't have staff members passing licenses back and forth to each other. It's just such a huge part of our work this day and age. And so that's one element of it, but also you mentioned, just continuing on that path with integrating our financial systems. So Dan and Diane have made a lot of progress this year. They made migration. I think you did that in October to our timekeeping in our HR platform. We're working on that integration for this fiscal year into QuickBooks, but I think that there's more to come, more discussion to have on that. You mentioned already also, we want to make sure that this space is utilized, not just for our office, but for our partners. We've got a lot of demand on the boardroom and these meeting rooms, and we would love to come back and have a conversation about outfitting these to be a little bit more accessible, make the furniture fit, that kind of a thing. So we've got some ideas about that. But the big deal, I think, is making sure that from a management perspective, we've got those systems in place. So again, staff time allocations, making sure that staff are working on the things that we have the resources to support, and then always going after those new grant opportunities. So I feel like we're in expansion mode.
That's good news.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. So
Thank you for that. In fact, I had a community meeting yesterday and PlanRVA came up with respect to grant writers and the funds available federally.
Oh, wow.
For climate change and for
yes.
all, the associated costs with that. And so I mentioned you all yesterday. I told them they should come to the meeting and speak.
That'd be great.
They are very passionate. Committed. They want me to get an electric car too soon. That's how passionate they are. But anyway, that came up yesterday in my community meeting at 2:00. Yesterday was interesting. And RVA came in. I was really impressed with it. My citizens who came up with the idea, and I told them that the grant writer opportunity is certainly here.
Great.
And I'm
That's good
glad
to
to
hear.
hear it. I'm just so really pleased to hear that. It's amazing the connections.
Yeah.
Well, and I would just say this briefly, you're right, the connections are remarkable. We believe that, well, not singularly, but certainly on the corporate level, that will be, that's been one of the most asked for, or probably one of the most presumed benefits of the grant writers is some of the local opportunities that folks will be able to use, have some expertise to use these folks here. So not only internally, right, because I mean, that's extremely important, but also having that as a reach towards Charlotte County. So that's interesting that you're doing that.
Yeah, and yeah, I was applauding, as you said, that
That's really exciting.
I'm smiling inside because it came up just yesterday
Excellent.
regarding the federal funds available, but you have to access them. So this is great news.
Good.
Excellent, excellent.
Good.
Okay, wonderful.
So that's where we are.
Okay.
And we're excited about being able to put this before the commission
Okay.
in its final format
Yes.
in May to be able to, kind of, again, just really connect these priorities. And I think it's already been said, but it can never be said enough. This is based on continuing with the current per capita rate. It's not an increase to the assessments. It's
Okay.
those requests have already been in, and I know were approved through your local budgets, and so we're living within those means. And Dan has been working on the modeling to make sure we can do all of this within the constraints that we live.
The due structure we have in place.
Mhm.
All right. That's good. Okay. That's great. That's excellent. Any other comments? Anyone? Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well,
This
we
has been a
appreciate
long road that you've been leading us on.
Well, it's not me, it's the committee, it's you.
Well,
And you
yeah,
don't do it. I'm
but we
just here to
appreciate
help.
you.
I'm just here to help where I can.
we really
But
appreciate
anyway,
it.
appreciate it's a team effort. We have some great committee members, I tell you. As you well know, around the table and over and those great committee members in the city. So we greatly appreciate it. So on the agenda, then we have item 4, future meetings, schedule, leadership and membership. What do you have in mind with that
So
in that regard?
I
Mhm.
guess two things. I'm well aware that the committee appointments are made by the chair at the beginning of the calendar year or fiscal year rather. So just wanted to kind of make that announcement that typically this time of year, we let our committee members know that if they are interested in continuing to serve or not. I think this particular committee, I will say, has benefited tremendously from having good representation from a number of the jurisdictions. So just wanted to put that out there. We typically wouldn't have another meeting on the regular quarterly schedule until July, I guess it would be. Does that sound right to you? I think
Is that
so.
our next?
So I just, kind of want to make sure that we are able to meet with a finance committee as constituted. And that through the transition of any kind of membership, we still have a committee that can meet because that July meeting is pretty critical because it's heading into the audit season. So just wanted to kind of put that bug in everyone's ear. And also just to extend thanks because I know that most of the committee members pledged that they would stay on until the move, which technically ended in December, but I think everybody's been willing to stick with us through the end of the year. And so I just wanted to say I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And one thing that's coming to mind for me is the new external auditor. I know there was a great deal of concern expressed in December and propolis regarding that. And I know that's something we want to look at as a committee and as a recommendation to the full commission in terms of auditor continuation and what a new auditor. I know that was the desire expressed.
We do have a letter of engagement that carries us for this fiscal
Yeah.
year with the same auditor, but it is, you're correct. I think it's on the agenda for next fiscal year as a
We just
discussion.
completed year 103.
Yeah, so very good.
23.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember I'll share for the benefit of those who maybe weren't there. At the time we discussed that, it was a lot of discussions about that relative to our financial condition.
Yeah.
And as I shared, one of the prior chairmen removed it twice, that, we want to be careful shopping for a CPA when we are in financial constraints or trouble. And I didn't want us to appear that we're shopping for a CPA. I think and that's was very important. So that was one of the reasons why I did continuity as we discussed. So But thank you, I appreciate that, and certainly scheduling is fine, and it's great news, I think, as we end this year. Fiscally, I think it's great news for us, in the committee,
Absolutely.
in the commission, so thank you, again, greatly appreciate all you all have done,
Thank you.
bringing us through the dire situations of losing and having to go to our jurisdictions and our owners, if you will, in that respect, to bolster our financial position and fund balance. So good news. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Any other comments
No, sir.
for the good of Orland? If not, then any other business, any type business to bring forth? Hearing none, we can stand adjourned. Thank you all.